Hello! I'm going to start here with another Singularity Let's Play. As I go through this quick enough, probably spend a little time building up with the new Explore event that currently rolled over. I mean, it's not the first time I've seen this one, the medical, biological, anatomy, whatever you want to call it, exploration event, but it just started this iteration of it. So, might spend a little time building up. A little early progress now. Which is that music is loud. Where did it come out of? Or don't remember hearing this before. And annoying. That's annoying music. I don't like it. Anyways, so let's see. I was watching a video recently. YouTube video was talking about the Koch brothers buying up the fertilizer industry in the U.S. So farmers out in like Iowa are seeing the fertilizer plant that the Iowa taxpayers subsidized the construction of now being bought by the Koch brothers. And the whole point of the thing was to create competition for the Koch brothers owned fertilizer industry that was forcing farmers to pay absolutely exorbitant price gouging rates for fertilizer. You know, they need to grow their crops. And so the previous governor had subsidized construction of a new fertilizer plant to add competition. And then, of course, it got bought up because, I mean, maybe most of you probably don't care about that story. But there is something to be said there about the tendency of capitalism to head towards monopoly, invariably, inevitably, in all societies and all times. It always ends up a monopoly, and then a few people getting very rich while everyone else gets screwed. Which is to say, capitalism is not a sustainable or stable system. And, you know, it's absolutely vile where it ends up. Ends up with monopoly, ends up with keeping huge numbers of people in poverty. They can't meet their life needs. They die due to lack of health care, lack of housing, um, deaths of despair due to being ambitious and seeing no chance to get ahead in life, or seeing their lives destroyed by increasing economic pressures on the top. It leads to inevitably the rise of like fascist movements, which lead to horrendous things, and is really the defense mechanism of capitalism and decay. And by defense mechanism, I mean fascism is essentially the immune system of capitalism to protect the privileges and power of the super rich by crushing all those who would stand against them. Of course, that's assuming that those who stand against the rich are some kind of pathogen, when in reality it's the rich who have the mentality of cancer, infinite growth, regardless of all limitations or resource constraints. Capitalism itself, that's the pathogen, that's the virus. But regardless, it's a system of control and oppression. Fascism is that ultimately comes out of capitalist systems as the contradictions of capitalism become impossible for people to deal with further, and they start demanding change. And then the rich fund far-right movements to maintain their control. That's what they did with the Nazis. That's what they did with Mussolini. Mussolini was famously very, very well funded by powerful industrialists in Italy, and Hitler was funded by wealthy German industrialists. The Nazi Party got a lot of its early funding from major industrialists and aristocrats in Germany, because they knew that the Nazis would help them maintain their power and privilege, and that's exactly what they did, rather than see more egalitarian policies. Uh, For those who don't know, before the Nazis, Germany was a social democracy, the Weimar Republic. Social democracy, think like Norway, Sweden, generous social programs. And this was threatening to the very rich in Germany who um, wanted to maintain their power and privilege. And when the Great Depression really hit Germany hard, and the reparations that they were having to pay, war reparations for World War One. Excuse me. When times got hard, social democracies wanted to tax the rich and use it to fund programs to help ordinary Germans. That was threatening to the very rich, so they funded the Nazis, who claimed that the real problem wasn't the very rich, it was whatever minority groups they were talking about each week. It wasn't just the Jews. They targeted the Roma, they targeted, um, to a degree, black people even. There weren't many of them in Germany, but it had some horrendous things planning for Africa and the Middle East. Brown and black skinned people. They, complain about women's rights. They complain about transgender individuals because some of the first transgender studies were actually done in Germany. And that was some of the first books that the Nazis burned, was the transgender books. And studies on transgender, bisexuality, and homosexuality. They some of those famous book burning piles, those were the first books they put in the piles. The first times they did book burns were on those sort of texts. And then also Marxist literature was the other thing that they burned and destroyed, and trade union organizing pamphlets and stuff. When you realize that's what they're burning, it becomes much more obvious what they were. It was counter-revolutionary reactionary force to prevent change that would hurt the rich. Very much like what's coming in the United States today, with Trump and his people being reactionaries and whining about DEI and such. It's really about maintaining the power of the rich and finding scapegoats they can get people upset about, so they won't look at the rich for why their lives suck. You don't look at the Koch brothers, or Musk, or Jeff Bezos, who are the real problem here. Of course, capitalism will always generate billionaires like that. So if you really want to end this cycle and prevent fascism from eventually taking over, because someday it's going to make one of these power grabs and succeed, even if it hasn't done it yet, then you got to go with getting rid of capitalism. You got to go with socialism. Otherwise, the alternative is, as the socialists will tell you, socialism or barbarism. You don't have to necessarily like it, just have to realize socialism is the lesser of two evils, and fascism will absolutely crush and destroy everything that's good, eventually otherwise. Personally, I don't think it's an evil. When you look into the theory of socialism, while there are definite problems with blind spots in some of the theory, let me put it that way, it's largely makes a lot more, it largely is congruent with itself. It makes a lot more sense than capitalist, neoliberal capitalist, or definitely more than fascist theory. It even has an edge over Keynesian economics and that kind of understanding of the world, which makes a lot more sense than most of the theories, and explains a lot of things, but has some major failings that can't be ignored. Still, Keynesian economics worked quite well for quite a long time until they didn't. Part of that, the reason it started to fall apart, was because the growth of monopolies, often at that time covertly, with large conglomerates and trusts and price fixing schemes and stuff emerging under the surface, hidden from the public eye. And that kind of undermined Keynesian economics a lot, but it wasn't a perfect theory. And as I said, socialism explains the world better than Keynesian economics. even though it itself has flaws in the theory. Because, that's the process of understanding the world. Is we come up with a theory. It's not perfect. We refine the theory, improve the theory. We come up with something better. You know, Marxism is an evolving field of political philosophy. So is like non-ideological actual economics. They're done with integrity. Of course, these days people try to define non-ideological as the air quote neoliberal consensus, but that is actually an ideology that was pushed when the evidence showed it was bullshit. Neoliberalism was scoffed at by early Keynesians because it's not congruent. It doesn't make sense. It's not accurate. There's no evidence for its claims. And it was pushed, and it didn't win acceptance because the evidence was somehow showed it was true or accurate. It replaced Keynesian economics because very rich people put funding into pushing it, and politicians side with it because it allowed them to do the things they wanted to do. If they side with the neoliberals, they could make excuses, cut welfare systems, and cut taxes on the rich, and get kickbacks from their rich buddies and such. Get donations, all that. So even though Keynesian economics had better explanatory power than neoliberal economics, this was not a victory of evidence and facts. This was a victory of political power and control and manipulation of discourse by what was at the time very right-wing alternative theory of economics. Neoliberalism was so far to the right compared to prevailing economic theories at the time, and it's bullshit. It's not supported by facts, as I said. It never was, never has been. It doesn't have explanatory power advantage over Keynesian stuff, and Keynesian stuff is not perfect, mind you. It's just better than any of this neoliberal shit. I don't know. We live in a dark version of history. Almost like would hope this is reality. Would almost wish that it was some kind of fever dream alt history to a better world, but it's not. It's the world we actually live in. And yeah, the Soviet Union collapsed, even though it kept capitalist powers honest and forced them to take better care of their working classes, so they wouldn't want to institute socialism. And mind you, the Soviet Union was about the worst version of socialism you can imagine. Not to say it was bad, but that it was so much worse than other Marxist theories. It was, how would I say it, a compromise to what was deemed possible by its followers. The way the Soviet Union did things, with secret police and large military budgets, even though socialists are, by their very nature, pacifist and generally want to cut military budgets and not have secret police. Or against government control, but with the United States posing such a threat, the Marxist-Leninists decided that they had to do these things to try and win the Cold War. Which is to say, it was about the worst version of socialism possible. It's not inherent to socialist theory the way the Soviets did things. But yeah, we live in a dark world. The United States is an uncontested empire, and it's driving the planet towards climate collapse. And let's be honest, people sit there and say shit about carbon footprints and stuff, and not that people don't have some responsibility to try and consume less, but there's going to be destruction of the planet as long as there's drilling of oil and mining coal. It's going to get used somewhere. If people try and drive more fuel-efficient cars, for instance, then the companies would just sell the oil in another country. It might reduce their profits, and that might lead to less future increases in oil production. So it's not irrelevant. People always know that the way that profits guide how much investment there is in increased production. But the planet is going to die as long as we continue to produce the current levels of fossil fuels. We don't have to, there could be zero new growth in oil and coal, and as long as current production levels are just flat and just enough is invested to maintain current levels, the planet will die. So, um, it's absolutely necessary to destroy existing fossil fuel infrastructure, to decommission oil refineries, to shut down pipelines, to close coal mines, that kind of thing. Because otherwise, the planet will die if these continue to operate. Because that coal, that oil, will be used somewhere on the planet, guaranteed. Prices might be lowered, but whether the coal mine can sell their coal at a high price or a low price, as long as they can sell it enough to cover costs, they will continue to sell it, and it will continue to destroy the planet. Yeah, it's an uncomfortable truth, but it's the facts of the world, and it's the facts of how markets work. Companies will just alter their prices if demand goes up or down a little. So if people get very conscious of their carbon footprint and try and consume a little less oil, it'll just hurt oil profits a little and lead to a small decrease in future increases in production. That is, instead of production increasing 12%, it might increase only 10% next year or something. But either one of those numbers will still lead to the destruction of Earth. So I hope I'm making myself clear. Maybe I'm not. Maybe if I was doing political video, I got more of a handle of video editing and creating shiny graphics. I'd produce a chart for you guys and try and visualize what I'm saying. Some people understand things best that way. But tired. Long COVID doesn't leave me much energy, and I just talking while I do a little bit of this. Even that is coming to an end here, because I've almost made enough progress in this to say, okay, I'm going to go do other things, like another pop-up attention video or returning to Avorion, which I really need to do another video on. I mean, it's a kind of fun game, but it's very involved for me. Requires a lot of thinking on how I'm going to design things, my ships better. I looked up a way to scrap and redesign my existing ship, and then I forgot it already. So I have to load that up again to find the best way to essentially reduce the whole ship to one block and then start over. Even though there's some waste in that, it's less than just abandoning the ship. So I've got to rewrite. I don't know. People who play Avorion probably know what I'm talking about, and the rest are clueless. I don't know. There's always more to do. All right. Well, viewers, I hope you enjoyed this video. Apologize if I seem pretty low energy, for not making a ton of sense. Audio isn't loud enough. Here, maybe that helps a little with that. Turn the volume up slightly. Take care of each other, viewers. Really, take care of each other. Find if someone's around you is in need, help them. If someone needs a hug, give them a hug, you know. Be kind to yourselves. May you always find a guy who started with you. Until next time, this is Northstar. Adieu and good luck.